The headlines exploded across every news channel before sunrise. World's most feared mafia boss becomes father of quintuplets after just 1 month of marriage. Some called it impossible. Others called it a miracle. Conspiracy theories flooded the internet. Doctors refused to comment. Even powerful politicians whispered behind closed doors. But none of them knew the truth. The real story had nothing to do with impossible pregnancies. It had everything to do with two broken souls who never expected to save each other. Damian Moretti wasn't just rich. He was terrifying. The 40-year-old mafia king controlled an underground empire stretching across Europe, America, and parts of Asia. His enemies disappeared overnight. His allies feared disappointing him more than death itself. People called him the devil in Armani. No one dared look him in the eyes. No one knew that every night, after everyone left, Damian sat alone inside his enormous mansion. The silence was louder than gunfire. Money couldn't buy peace. Power couldn't erase loneliness. He had buried everyone he had ever loved. His parents, his younger brother, his fiancée. One by one. Since then, his heart had become colder than marble. Until one rainy evening, everything changed. On the opposite side of the city lived 28-year-old Amara Johnson. She worked 3 jobs, morning, afternoon, night. Not because she dreamed of becoming rich, because she was raising her little twin sisters after losing both parents in a tragic accident. Bills piled up. Rent was overdue. She smiled. Every child in her neighborhood knew Miss Amara. She shared food, even when she barely had enough. She tutored struggling students for free. She carried groceries for elderly neighbors without being asked. People often wondered why someone with so little gave away so much. Her answer never changed. Kindness costs less than regret. One stormy night, fate brought 2 completely different worlds together. Amara finished cleaning an office building near midnight. As she walked home, she noticed a black luxury SUV crashed against a concrete barrier. The driver was unconscious. Blood covered the steering wheel. Several expensive watches glittered on the man's wrist. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care. Ignoring the danger, she smashed the driver's window with a loose brick. Rain soaked her clothes as she struggled to pull the unconscious stranger out before the smoking engine caught fire. Moments later, the SUV exploded. Flames shot into the sky. People screamed. Emergency crews arrived. The mysterious man survived. Amara quietly disappeared before anyone learned her name. She still had another shift in 5 hours. When Damian woke up in a private hospital, his security team surrounded him. The woman who saved you vanished. He frowned. No cameras? They mysteriously stopped working during the accident. For the first time in years, Damian smiled. Someone had saved him without asking for money, without asking for fame, without even asking his name. He ordered every investigator in his empire to find her, not to reward her, to thank her. 3 weeks later, a small community center received an unexpected visitor. Black luxury vehicles blocked the street. Children stared through classroom windows. Out stepped Damian Moretti. Every bodyguard remained outside. He walked in alone. Amara looked up from helping children with homework. You, he nodded. You saved my life. She laughed nervously. I only did what anyone should. Damian answered quietly. No, most people would have taken my watch. She smiled. I already own something more valuable. He looked confused. My peace. For several seconds, neither spoke. Something invisible connected them. Not attraction. Recognition. 2 lonely people who understood pain. Damian began funding the community center anonymously. New computers arrived. Books, medical supplies, scholarships. Whenever Amara tried discovering the donor, she found nothing. Months later, she accidentally learned the truth. She drove straight to Damian's mansion. You lied. I promised I wouldn't owe you. You don't. Then stop paying my debt with kindness. Damian looked at her. For the first time, I wanted to help someone without expecting anything back. Silence filled the room. Amara finally smiled. Then help more people. That conversation changed Damien forever. Instead of expanding criminal operations, he secretly invested billions into hospitals, schools, shelters, and orphanages. His closest associates thought he had lost his mind. He had. He had finally found his heart again. A year later, the impossible happened. Damien proposed. Not with hundreds of reporters, not with diamonds covering the room. Just a simple question inside the community center where they first truly met. Will you build a life with me? Amara answered before he finished asking. Yes. Their wedding shocked the world, the feared mafia boss, the compassionate woman from a struggling neighborhood. Nobody believed the marriage would last. 1 month after the wedding, doctors gathered around medical reports in complete disbelief. Multiple independent scans confirmed the same result: 5 healthy babies, quintuplets. Medical experts debated nonstop. Television hosts argued. Social media exploded. How is that possible? Speculation spread faster than facts. But inside their home, none of that mattered. Damien stared at the ultrasound with tears he hadn't shed since childhood. Amara gently squeezed his hand. You've faced thousands of enemies. Why are you crying now? He laughed through the tears. Because for the first time, I'm afraid of losing something beautiful. She rested her head on his shoulder. You won't. Outside, reporters waited day and night. Inside, 2 people prepared for a future neither had ever believed they deserved. Neither of them realized that the greatest challenge wasn't explaining the miracle to the world. It was protecting 5 tiny lives from the dangerous empire that refused to let Damien walk away forever. The news of Amara's pregnancy spread across the globe like wildfire. Television stations interrupted live broadcasts. Social media influencers created endless theories. Doctors from different countries argued over medical reports. Some claimed the scans had been manipulated. Others insisted it was a once-in-history miracle. Meanwhile, Damien Moretti couldn't have cared less. His entire world had shrunk to one person, Amara. Every morning, before attending meetings, he personally prepared her breakfast. Every afternoon, he canceled appointments just to accompany her to doctors' visits. Every evening, he read parenting books that his security team secretly ordered online. The same man who once terrified governments now panicked over whether his wife had eaten enough fruit. His bodyguards could hardly believe what they were seeing. One whispered, "Boss used to carry assault rifles." Another replied, "Now he carries pregnancy pillows." Even Damien laughed when he overheard them. For the first time in decades, his mansion sounded alive. But happiness never remained unnoticed. Far across the Atlantic, inside a luxurious penthouse, Victor Romano watched the news with a cold smile. Damien's oldest rival, the only crime lord powerful enough to challenge the Moretti empire. He slammed his whiskey glass onto the table. So, the devil finally has something to lose. His advisor nodded carefully. The woman, the babies. Victor smiled. No, the hope. If I destroy that, I destroy Damien forever. Back in New York, Amara noticed something strange. A black sedan appeared outside their home every afternoon. Different driver, same car model. Whenever security approached, it disappeared. Damien immediately doubled security. More guards, more armored vehicles. More surveillance, Amara sighed. I don't want to live like a prisoner. Damien gently touched her face. I'd rather imprison myself than bury you. She understood. His fear wasn't controlling. It came from trauma. Everyone he had loved had been taken away. He couldn't survive losing another family. Months passed. The babies grew stronger. Every ultrasound became another emotional moment. 5 tiny heartbeats echoed through the examination room. Thump, 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 thump. Damien stood frozen. The doctor smiled. They're all healthy. Amara laughed. You can breathe now. I forgot how, he admitted honestly. One afternoon, the couple visited the community center where they first met. The children surrounded Amara immediately. Can we touch the babies? Are there really 5? Will they all look like you? She laughed so hard that tears formed in her eyes. Damien watched quietly from the doorway. Years ago, children ran away whenever they saw him. Now, they climbed onto his lap without fear. One little boy handed him a crayon drawing. It showed 6 stick figures holding hands. You forgot someone. Damien smiled. The bodyguards? The boy shook his head. The grandma you'll adopt someday. Everyone burst into laughter. Damien carefully folded the drawing and slipped it into his wallet. It became the most valuable thing he owned. That night, a coded message arrived at Damien's headquarters. His intelligence chief entered the office without knocking. Boss, we intercepted communications. Damien's expression darkened. Who? Victor Romano. The room fell silent. What does he want? The answer chilled everyone. He isn't targeting your business. He wants your family. Damien slowly stood. Every scar from his violent past suddenly felt fresh again. Find every safe house. Move Amara tomorrow morning. No mistakes. The orders spread across the empire within minutes before sunrise. The convoy quietly left the mansion. Armored SUVs surrounded Amara's vehicle from every direction. Helicopters monitored the skies. Snipers watched nearby rooftops. The destination remained known to only 3 people. A secluded estate hidden deep within the mountains. No cameras, no visitors, no media, no unnecessary staff as the gates closed behind them. Amara finally exhaled. I never imagined becoming a mother would feel like entering witness protection. Damien forced a smile. When the babies arrive, I promise, we'll disappear somewhere no one knows our names. She looked at him. Would you really leave everything behind? Without hesitation. Every dollar, every title, every ounce of power. She placed his hand gently against her stomach. A tiny kick answered him. Damien's eyes widened one, then another. Soon, all 5 babies seemed to move at once. He laughed like an excited child. They're already arguing. Amara grinned. No, they're reminding you what's worth fighting for. Neither of them noticed the tiny drone hovering high above the mountains. Its camera silently recorded the entire estate. Miles away, Victor Romano watched the live feed on a massive screen. He leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile spread across his face. So, I've finally found them. He picked up his phone and gave a single order. Prepare the operation. Bring me Damien's family, alive. The sun had barely risen over the mountain estate when Damien woke to the sound of alarms echoing through the halls. Every security monitor flashed red at once. His chief of security rushed into the room, breathing heavily. Boss, someone breached the outer perimeter. Damien immediately pulled Amara behind him. She instinctively placed both hands over her growing stomach as fear spread across her face. Stay here, Damien whispered. No matter what happens, do not open this door. Before leaving, he kissed her forehead and rested his hand on her belly. I'll always come back to you. Outside, dozens of heavily armed guards searched the forest surrounding the estate. Thermal cameras detected movement between the trees, but whenever the guards approached, the figures vanished like ghosts. Damien realized this wasn't an ordinary attack. Someone was testing his defenses. Hours later, the search ended without finding a single intruder. Although everyone tried to relax, Damien couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were watching every move. Hundreds of miles away, Victor Romano studied detailed drone footage of the estate. His technology expert smiled confidently. Their security is impressive. Victor calmly replied, Every fortress has a weakness. We only need patience. Over the following weeks, Damien refused to leave Amara's side. Business meetings were moved into the estate. His criminal empire practically ran itself while its feared leader spent his afternoons assembling baby cribs, reading parenting guides, and arguing with interior designers about the safest paint for the nursery walls. His soldiers secretly laughed whenever they saw photographs of their ruthless boss carefully folding tiny baby clothes. One veteran guard shook his head. I survived 3 gang wars. but I've never seen the boss terrified until he had to install a baby stroller. Damien simply smiled. Bullets are easier than babies. Amara noticed the change in him every day. The anger that once lived in his eyes had slowly disappeared, replaced by warmth and quiet excitement. One evening, they sat together on the mansion balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and orange. Amara gently leaned against his shoulder. "Do you ever regret meeting me?" she asked softly. Damien looked shocked. "Regret?" She nodded. "You gave up so much because of me. Your empire is changing. Your enemies are becoming bolder." Damien took her hand and kissed it gently. "Before you, I owned the world but had no reason to live in it. Now I would gladly lose the world just to hear our children laugh." Tears filled Amara's eyes as another series of tiny kicks came from inside her womb. Damien laughed. "They're listening again." She smiled. "Maybe they're telling us they'll always be together." Days later, the doctors arrived for another private examination inside the estate. After carefully reviewing every scan, the lead physician removed his glasses with amazement. "I've delivered thousands of babies during my career, but I've never seen anything like this." Damien's heartbeat quickened. "Is something wrong?" The doctor smiled. "Quite the opposite. All 5 babies are developing perfectly. Their heartbeats are incredibly strong. And considering the circumstances, your wife is healthier than we expected." Relief washed over the room. Damien hugged Amara tightly before thanking every member of the medical team personally. Later that night, as everyone celebrated the good news with a quiet family dinner, one of Damien's trusted intelligence officers arrived unexpectedly. His face had turned pale. He placed a small encrypted tablet on the dining table. "Boss, we intercepted another message from Victor Romano." Damien opened the file. It contained only one sentence: "No wall can protect a family from betrayal." Damien immediately understood the meaning. Someone close to him had become Victor's informant. He slowly looked around the room, filled with loyal guards, trusted servants, doctors, and longtime advisors. Every face appeared familiar. Every person had served him faithfully for years. Yet somewhere among them hid someone willing to sell his family's future. Damien quietly locked the tablet and forced himself to remain calm so Amara wouldn't panic. But deep inside, an old instinct returned. The instinct that had once made him the most feared mafia boss alive. If there truly was a traitor inside his home, Damien knew only one thing for certain. Before anyone could touch Amara or their unborn quintuplets, someone else would disappear first. Damien did not sleep that night. While everyone else believed the estate was safe, he quietly activated a secret security protocol that only he knew existed. Every phone call, every security feed, every keycard entry, and every radio transmission inside the estate was monitored without informing anyone. If there was a traitor, Damien intended to let that person believe they remained invisible. The following morning, he acted as though nothing had happened. He smiled during breakfast, accompanied Amara on a walk through the estate gardens, and even joked with the doctors about which of the quintuplets would inherit his stubborn personality. Amara noticed the smile on his face, but she also noticed his eyes. They never stopped scanning the surroundings. They never stopped calculating every possible threat. That afternoon, Damien deliberately announced a false plan in front of everyone. "Tomorrow morning, we're transferring Amara to our private medical facility in Switzerland." Several staff members nodded without suspicion. The information spread naturally throughout the estate. Exactly 3 hours later, Damien's intelligence team intercepted an encrypted message leaving the property. It contained only 7 words. "Target moving tomorrow. Switzerland. Attack during transport." Damien stared at the screen in complete silence. They had found the traitor. The encrypted device belonged to one of his senior security commanders, a man who had worked beside him for nearly 15 years. Marco survived countless gunfights protecting Damien, celebrated family holidays with him, and once even taken a bullet while defending him. Damien refused to believe it until undeniable evidence appeared. Late that night, Marco secretly met an unknown contact near the eastern forest. Hidden cameras recorded everything. An envelope full of cash changed hands. Maps of the estate were exchanged. Escape routes were explained in detail. Damien watched the footage without saying a single word. Betrayal hurt more than any bullet ever had. Instead of arresting Marco immediately, Damien decided to turn the betrayal against Victor Romano. The next morning, the entire estate appeared to prepare for departure, exactly as announced. Armored vehicles lined up outside. Helicopters circled overhead. Medical equipment was loaded into secure transport trucks. Marco secretly smiled, believing his information had already reached Victor. Right on. Schedule the convoy left the estate and entered a narrow mountain highway. Less than 10 minutes later, explosions rocked the road ahead. Masked gunmen emerged from the surrounding forest and opened heavy fire. Missiles struck the lead vehicle, while armored trucks blocked every escape route. Victor's soldiers believed victory was guaranteed. Then the rear doors of every SUV suddenly opened. Instead of doctors and nurses, dozens of Damien's elite soldiers poured out wearing full tactical armor. Hidden machine gun positions activated from the cliffs above. Smoke grenades filled the valley. Within seconds, the attackers realized they had walked directly into Damien's trap. Victor watched the ambush unfold through a drone's live camera feed. His confident smile slowly disappeared. "Where is Amara?" he demanded. One of his men searched every vehicle in panic. "She isn't there." Victor slammed his fist onto the table. Damien appeared on another monitor inside the command center. He had intentionally hacked Victor's private communication channel. Looking directly into the camera, Damien spoke calmly. "You wanted my family. Instead, you found my army." Before Victor could answer, Damien disconnected the transmission. The battle ended within 20 minutes. Most of Victor's mercenaries surrendered while others fled into the mountains. Marco was captured alive after attempting to escape during the chaos. Damien personally questioned him. Tears streamed down Marco's face as he confessed that Victor had kidnapped his teenage daughter months earlier and threatened to kill her unless he betrayed Damien. For several long moments, nobody spoke. Damien remembered the countless years Marco had served faithfully before impossible circumstances broke him. Instead of executing him, Damien quietly gave a surprising order. "Find his daughter. Bring her home." Every guard in the room looked stunned. Marco collapsed to his knees, unable to believe the mercy he had been shown. Damien simply turned away. No father should lose his child because of another man's cruelty. Unknown to everyone inside the estate, Victor Romano smiled again as he watched the failed ambush reports arrive. The attack had never been his real objective. While Damien's forces fought in the mountains, another covert team had slipped into the city and quietly entered the community center where Amara had first met Damien. Hidden beneath the floorboards of the old building was a locked metal box containing documents that Amara herself had never known existed. Inside that box was a secret capable of changing the lives of Damien, Amara, and their unborn quintuplets forever. Damien returned to the estate believing he had finally gained the upper hand, but something deep inside told him Victor Romano never attacked without a second plan hidden beneath the first. That instinct proved correct when his intelligence chief rushed into the library, carrying an encrypted file recovered from one of Victor's captured men. After decoding it, only one sentence appeared on the screen. The key was never the woman. It was her past. Damien immediately ordered a full investigation into Amara's childhood. At first, she resisted. "There's nothing to investigate," she insisted. "I grew up in foster care after my parents died." Damien gently took her hands. "Sometimes the people who raise us don't know the whole truth." 2 days later, an elderly nun from the orphanage where Amara had lived arrived at the estate under heavy security. As soon as she saw Amara, tears filled her eyes. "I've prayed for this day for almost 30 years." Amara embraced the old woman, confused by her emotional reaction. The nun slowly removed an aged leather journal from her bag. Your mother asked me to protect this until the day someone came looking for you. Inside the journal were photographs Amara had never seen before. One showed her biological parents standing beside a large humanitarian hospital in Africa. Another showed them shaking hands with world leaders while opening schools and medical clinics for impoverished communities. The final page contained a handwritten letter addressed to their unborn daughter. Amara's hands trembled as she read every word. Her parents revealed they had created an international charitable foundation worth billions of dollars dedicated to providing free healthcare, education, and clean water across developing nations. Before they could legally transfer ownership, they were killed in what authorities declared a traffic accident. The foundation mysteriously disappeared, and every financial record vanished. Damien's expression darkened. That wasn't an accident. His investigators quickly confirmed his suspicion. Years earlier, Victor Romano's criminal organization had secretly stolen control of the foundation by eliminating everyone connected to it and erasing every legal document proving Amara's inheritance. Victor hadn't targeted Amara because she married Damien. He had been searching for her long before either of them met. She was the last surviving heir to an enormous fortune built not on crime, but on compassion. Victor feared that if the truth ever became public, governments around the world would reopen investigations into decades of corruption connected to his empire. Amara quietly closed the journal and stared out the window. My parents spent their lives helping strangers. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Someone murdered them for doing good. Damien wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Then we'll finish what they started. Before either of them could say another word, the estate's emergency communication system activated. A secure satellite call appeared on the main screen. Victor Romano's face slowly emerged. Unlike previous conversations, he wasn't smiling. Behind him stood dozens of heavily armed soldiers surrounding frightened civilians. Damien immediately recognized the location. It was one of the hospitals secretly funded by Amara's late parents decades earlier. Victor calmly adjusted his tie and spoke as though discussing business. Congratulations. You finally discovered the truth. Amara stepped closer to the screen. Leave those people alone. Victor laughed softly. I will, if you bring me the journal and surrender yourself by sunrise. Damien answered before Amara could speak. Never. Victor's smile disappeared. He raised one finger, and one of his men forced an elderly doctor onto his knees. Every hour you delay, another innocent person dies. The screen went black. Silence consumed the room. Every guard looked toward Damien, waiting for orders. Amara slowly wiped away her tears and looked directly into her husband's eyes. This isn't just about us anymore. Damien nodded. For the first time since becoming a father-to-be, he realized protecting his family meant protecting hundreds of innocent lives connected to Amara's parents' forgotten legacy. As thunder rolled across the mountains outside, Damien opened an old steel vault hidden beneath the estate. Inside rested weapons, intelligence files, and secret plans he had sworn never to use again after marrying Amara. He quietly loaded a pistol before locking the vault behind him. The peaceful husband and soon-to-be father disappeared for a moment, and in his place stood the legendary Mafia Boss. The underworld had feared for decades. Victor Romano believed he had forced Damien back into the darkness. What Victor didn't realize was that this time Damien wasn't fighting for power, revenge, or territory. He was fighting for 5 unborn children, the woman who had saved his soul, and a promise made to 2 parents who had given their lives trying to make the world a better place. The storm intensified as Damien's convoy sped through the night toward the hospital where Victor Romano held innocent people hostage. Every mile brought him closer to the man, responsible for years of pain, betrayal, and bloodshed. Yet Damien repeated one promise to himself over and over. No matter what happened, he would bring Amara and their unborn quintuplets into a future free from fear. Unknown to Victor, Damien had already contacted international authorities. financial investigators, and trusted intelligence agencies using evidence hidden inside Amara's parents' journal. While Victor believed he controlled the game, his criminal empire was quietly collapsing around him. Bank accounts were frozen, warehouses raided, corrupt officials arrested, and secret properties seized. His influence disappeared hour by hour. Still, Victor refused to surrender. At the hospital, he gathered frightened doctors, nurses, patients, and children inside the main lobby, surrounding them with armed men. When Damien finally arrived, he walked through the front entrance alone with empty hands raised. Every sniper covering the building received one clear order through their earpieces. Do not fire, unless innocent lives are in immediate danger. Victor smiled as Damien entered. You came without an army. Damien answered calmly. No army is worth the life of one innocent child. Victor laughed and pointed his weapon toward the terrified hostages. You're weaker than you used to be. Damien shook his head. No, I finally learned what real strength looks like. At that moment, Amara appeared through another entrance, despite Damien's earlier instructions to stay behind. Surrounded by security officers, she slowly walked into the lobby holding the leather journal against her chest. Damien's face filled with panic. You shouldn't be here. She looked into his eyes and softly replied. This began with my family. It ends with my family. Victor demanded the journal. Amara stepped forward, but instead of handing it to him, she opened it to the final page. Hidden inside the back cover was a sealed envelope no one had previously noticed. She removed it carefully and handed it to Damien. Inside were original ownership documents, encrypted account information, and a handwritten confession from one of Victor's former partners, describing how Amara's parents had been murdered to steal control of their humanitarian foundation. Victor's confident expression vanished. Before he could react, police sirens echoed from every direction. Helicopters circled overhead. Emergency lights illuminated the hospital windows. His remaining allies had abandoned him after learning his financial empire had collapsed. Furious, Victor grabbed Amara and held a gun to her head. Damien froze. Every officer aimed their weapons, but no one could take the shot safely. The room fell into complete silence. Then something unexpected happened. One of Victor's own bodyguards slowly lowered his rifle. He looked at the frightened children hiding behind hospital beds and quietly removed his weapon belt. I'm done, he said. Another guard followed, then another. Within seconds, nearly all of Victor's men laid down their weapons. They had joined him for money, not to murder innocent families. Realizing he stood completely alone, Victor stumbled backward in disbelief. Amara gently pushed his gun aside and stepped away unharmed. Police officers rushed forward and arrested him without another shot being fired. As he was led away in handcuffs, Victor glared at Damien one final time. You think you've won? Damien looked toward Amara, whose hand rested over the place where 5 tiny hearts continued beating. No, he answered quietly. They already did. Weeks later, the world learned the full truth. Amara's parents were officially cleared of every false accusation, and their humanitarian foundation was restored under Amara's leadership. Instead of keeping its enormous fortune, she expanded its mission by building hospitals, schools, orphanages, and maternity centers across countries that desperately needed them. Damien permanently dismantled the criminal empire he had inherited, helping investigators recover stolen money that was redirected toward victims and charitable causes. The mansion that once symbolized fear became a family home, filled with laughter, hope, and preparations for 5 newborn babies. On a peaceful autumn morning, Amara finally gave birth to 5 healthy children, 3 girls and 2 boys. News cameras from around the world gathered outside the hospital, expecting another unbelievable headline. But inside the delivery room, there were no reporters, no bodyguards, and no fear. There was only a grateful father holding his wife's hand as 5 tiny cries filled the room with life. Damien looked at each child before whispering with tears in his eyes. Everything I thought made me powerful was meaningless until I met your mother. Amara smiled, exhausted but happy, as their babies rested safely beside them. Outside, people celebrated what newspapers called the miracle of the quintuplets. Inside, Damien and Amara knew the real miracle had never been how 5 babies came into the world. It was how kindness had transformed 2 wounded hearts into a family that would spend the rest of their lives changing the lives of countless others. Part 75 years passed, and the story that had once shocked the world became something far more meaningful than a viral headline. The Moretti estate no longer resembled the fortress it had once been. The high walls remained, but the fear had disappeared. The mansion echoed with the laughter of 5 energetic children who treated every hallway as their personal playground. Ava Grace, Naomi, Elijah, and Isaiah were inseparable, each carrying a unique personality but sharing the same compassionate heart. Their mother had always shown others. Damien often watched them from his office window and smiled because the room that had once been used to plan criminal operations was now filled with children's drawings, family photographs, and colorful toys. His desk held no weapons anymore, only business reports from the Global Humanitarian Foundation that Amara now directed. Together, they had built hundreds of hospitals, schools, orphanages, and emergency shelters across Africa, North America, Europe, and Asia, continuing the dream Amara's parents had started decades earlier. Millions of people had received medical care, education, clean water, and food through their foundation. Yet Amara never allowed her children to believe they were better than anyone else. Every weekend, the family visited shelters and community centers where the quintuplets served meals, read books to younger children, planted trees, and helped distribute school supplies. When reporters once asked Damien why the world's former most feared mafia boss spent his Saturdays washing dishes in a homeless shelter, he simply smiled and answered, "Power can make people obey you, but kindness makes people remember you." His answer spread across the world and inspired countless others. One afternoon, while visiting the same community center where Amara had first saved his heart years before, Damien noticed an 8-year-old boy sitting alone on the front steps. The child wore torn clothes and held a small backpack that contained everything he owned. Damien quietly sat beside him and asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" The boy looked down and whispered, "My mom said she'd come back, but she never did." Damien recognized the loneliness in the child's eyes because he had once carried that same emptiness inside himself. Without saying another word, he took the boy's hand and walked him inside where Amara welcomed him with the same warm smile she had offered every stranger throughout her life. Their 5 children immediately invited the boy to play as though he had always been part of the family. Watching them together, Damien realized something extraordinary. Years earlier, one act of kindness had saved his life after a car crash. That single decision had led to love, healing, 5 beautiful children, and countless lives transformed around the world. The cycle of compassion had never stopped growing. As the sun slowly set outside the community center, Damien wrapped an arm around Amara, while their children laughed in the distance. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me?" he asked. Amara smiled. "I said kindness costs less than regret." Damien nodded. "You were right." She looked toward their children, helping the little boy unpack his backpack, and softly replied, "No one changes the world alone. It always begins with helping one person." Damien kissed her forehead as the sounds of laughter filled the building once again. For the first time in his life, he understood that his greatest legacy would never be his wealth, his former empire, or the fear his name once inspired. It would be the family built through love, the hope created through compassion, and the countless lives forever changed because one ordinary woman chose to save a stranger on a rainy night. Part 75 years passed, and the story that had once shocked the world became something far more meaningful than a viral headline. The Moretti estate no longer resembled the fortress it had once been. The high walls remained, but the fear had disappeared. The mansion echoed with the laughter of 5 energetic children who treated every hallway as their personal playground. Ava, Grace, Naomi, Elijah, and Isaiah were inseparable, each carrying a unique personality, but sharing the same compassionate heart their mother had always shown others. Damien often watched them from his office window and smiled because the room that had once been used to plan criminal operations was now filled with children's drawings, family photographs, and colorful toys. His desk held no weapons anymore, only business reports from the Global Humanitarian Foundation that Amara now directed. Together, they had built hundreds of hospitals, schools, orphanages, and emergency shelters across Africa, North America, Europe, and Asia, continuing the dream Amara's parents had started decades earlier. Millions of people had received medical care, education, clean water, and food through their foundation. Yet Amara never allowed her children to believe they were better than anyone else. Every weekend, the family visited shelters and community centers, where the quintuplets served meals, read books to younger children, planted trees, and helped distribute school supplies. When reporters once asked Damien why the world's former most feared mafia boss spent his Saturdays washing dishes in a homeless shelter, he simply smiled and answered, "Power can make people obey you, but kindness makes people remember you." His answer spread across the world and inspired countless others. One afternoon, while visiting the same community center where Amara had first saved his heart years before, Damien noticed an 8-year-old boy sitting alone on the front steps. The child wore torn clothes and held a small backpack that contained everything he owned. Damien quietly sat beside him and asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" The boy looked down and whispered, "My mom said she'd come back, but she never did." Damien recognized the loneliness in the child's eyes because he had once carried that same emptiness inside himself. Without saying another word, he took the boy's hand and walked him inside, where Amara welcomed him with the same warm smile she had offered every stranger throughout her life. Their 5 children immediately invited the boy to play, as though he had always been part of the family. Watching them together, Damien realized something extraordinary. Years earlier, one act of kindness had saved his life after a car crash. That single decision had led to love, healing, 5 beautiful children, and countless lives transformed around the world. The cycle of compassion had never stopped growing. As the sun slowly set outside the community center, Damien wrapped an arm around Amara while their children laughed in the distance. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me?" he asked. Amara smiled. "I said kindness costs less than regret." Damien nodded. "You were right." She looked toward their children, helping the little boy unpack his backpack, and softly replied, "No one changes the world alone. It always begins with helping one person." Damien kissed her forehead as the sounds of laughter filled the building once again. For the first time in his life, he understood that his greatest legacy would never be his wealth, his former empire, or the fear his name once inspired. It would be the family built through love, the hope created through compassion, and the countless lives forever changed because one ordinary woman chose to save a stranger on a rainy night. Part 8 Final. 20 years passed, and the unbelievable story that had once dominated headlines had become a legend told around the world. The phrase, "How is that possible?" no longer referred to the birth of the quintuplets. Instead, people used it when they witnessed how one family had transformed millions of lives through compassion. Under Amara's leadership, the Johnson Foundation had grown into one of the largest humanitarian organizations on Earth, building hospitals, schools, children's homes, and disaster relief centers across more than 70 countries. Damien never accepted any public titles or awards. Whenever governments invited him to receive honors, he politely declined, saying the recognition belonged to the doctors, teachers, volunteers, and ordinary people who served others every day. Their quintuplets grew into remarkable adults. Ava became a pediatric surgeon, dedicated to treating children regardless of their ability to pay. Grace became an international human rights lawyer, protecting vulnerable families. Naomi managed the foundation's global relief operations, traveling wherever disasters struck. Elijah became an engineer designing affordable clean water systems for remote villages, while Isaiah became a teacher who believed education could end cycles of poverty. Although each child followed a different path, they carried the same lesson their parents had taught them since childhood. That greatness is measured by the lives you lift, not the wealth you collect. One crisp autumn afternoon, the entire family returned to the small community center, where everything had begun decades earlier. The building had been carefully restored, but one corner remained untouched. It was the exact place where Amara had first met Damien after saving him from the burning vehicle. The old brick she had used to break the SUV window was displayed inside a simple glass case with a small plaque that read, "One act of courage changed countless lives." Hundreds of children, volunteers, doctors, teachers, and community members gathered outside to celebrate the opening of a new education center funded by the family. During the ceremony, a young girl stepped onto the stage and nervously asked Damien, "Mr. Moretti, is it true people were once afraid of you?" The crowd became silent. Damien smiled warmly before answering, "Yes, and I spent many years believing fear made me powerful." The little girl tilted her head. "What made you change?" Damien looked toward Amara, who was standing beside their grown children with the same gentle smile she had worn on the day they first met. "A woman who had almost nothing showed me what it meant to have everything." Tears filled many eyes as the audience applauded. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Damien and Amara sat together on a wooden bench outside the community center. The sun slowly disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson, just as it had years before. Their children and grandchildren laughed nearby, filling the air with joy. Damien quietly reached for Amara's hand. "Do you know what still amazes me?" he asked. She smiled. "What?" He looked at the family surrounding them. The world thought the miracle was 5 babies in one pregnancy. He gently squeezed her hand. "But the real miracle was that you saw a stranger bleeding in the rain and chose kindness instead of walking away." Amara rested her head on his shoulder. "Anyone could have done the same." Damien softly shook his head. "Maybe. But you did." They sat together in peaceful silence as the laughter of generations echoed around them. The empire built on fear had vanished long ago, replaced by a legacy built on love, hope, and compassion. The children they had raised continued serving others. Their grandchildren followed the same path, and the simple choice Amara made on one rainy night continued changing lives far beyond anything either of them could have imagined. As the stars appeared above, Damien looked at the family gathered before him and whispered the words he had carried in his heart for decades. "You didn't just save my life that night. You gave me one." Holding hands, they watched another beautiful sunset, grateful not for the wealth they possessed, but for the countless hearts they had touched together. And with that, the extraordinary journey of Damien, Amara, and their miraculous quintuplets came to a peaceful and unforgettable end. Like, subscribe, and support my channel. I really need your support. If you enjoy my video, please share it and leave your feedback in the comments.